Context is everything. In the 1860s, there was a new form of theater being introduced in the United States. It was known as vaudeville. Basically, you get a group of talented performers to do a variety of acts that are largely unrelated to each other. This can range from mimes and jugglers to trapeze artists and strongmen to singers and dancers. Its popularity boomed after the Civil War, and it was once called the heart of American show business. When electronic transmission became more widely available after the turn of the century in the form of radio and television, well-known acts like the Marx Brothers and Jack Benny would turn from the stage to these mediums. It was during this time that the term variety show came into existence. By its very definition, this could mean anything. It could be filled with comedic sketches, stand-up acts, and of course, music. This format became very prevalent during the golden age of television. The Ed Sullivan Show, for example, despite having gone off the air in 1971, is still very well known and an important inspiration to a lot of other television programs. It was instrumental in helping to broaden the exposure of several musical acts, such as Elvis Presley and the Beatles. In fact, the longest-running non-news program in the United States on either television or radio is Music and the Spoken Word, a religious musical program run out of Salt Lake City, Utah. The big TV networks would continue to feature variety shows well into the 70s. The headliner would usually be a well-known star or group like Frank Sinatra, Jackie Gleason, Jimmy Dean, or Carol Burnett. This would help to fill the spaces in regularly scheduled programming blocks alongside the news programs and narrative-based television. But by the early 80s, the variety show format had lost a lot of its popularity, yet that didn't stop certain groups from trying to keep it going. Now, variety shows on television are largely extinct as audiences' interests naturally have shifted elsewhere. But applying historical perspective is crucial to understanding how and why the Star Wars Holiday Special came to be. Otherwise, it looks as crazy and illogical and stupid as most of us claim it is. By all conceivable metrics, the Holiday Special should have been like a lot of these programs, aired only once and then largely forgotten by the next week. It was created in part to be disposable entertainment, though with significantly more backing than a lot of these shows had. Yet the title of Star Wars being attached to it means that it was cemented to be remembered forever, to its detriment. Despite the staggering success of the original film in 1977, there were still skeptics declaring that Star Wars was just a fad and would die out soon. George Lucas was trying to place his primary focus on developing Episode 5, but during this time he had a particularly horrible meeting with the Warner Brothers executive. Lucas had no love for Warner Brothers given their treatment of his first film, THX 1138, which they produced, but he went to the meeting anyway. The executive, one source says John Calley, another says it was Frank Wells, voiced his belief that Star Wars interest would be gone by September 77, and Lucas was fuming. He was going to prove everyone wrong, and it's hard to argue he wasn't successful in his endeavor. It's hard now to imagine the public's interest in a sequel to the most popular film of 1977 evaporating in only 3 years, but again, we have to consider the circumstances of the era. Sequels were certainly a thing, but successful sequels that did as well as the original or better were rare. For every From Russia with Love or A Shot in the Dark, there were at least 2 or 3 mediocre examples like Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Revenge of the Creature, or The Mummy's Curse. So keeping his property in the spotlight to better the financial profits of the oncoming sequels was very important to Lucas, particularly since Star Wars was the key to seeing his dreams about pushing the boundaries of movie-making forward realized. CBS came to Lucas with the idea of a variety show, and despite knowing most of his attention would go to the upcoming film sequel, Lucas agreed. He even provided them with a pitch of focusing the special on Wookiees and wrote for them the animated segment. CBS then hired some people experienced in variety shows to oversee the production, including writer Bruce Vilanch, who had worked with Donnie and Marie, who had previously done a Star Wars special which was a rating success for them. Initial hopes had been to get people like Cher and Raquel Welch on the program, but the studio still managed to get some known talent like Bea Arthur, Art Carney, and Harvey Korman, as well as roping in all the main stars of Star Wars. Stan Winston, by the way, was hired to design Chewie's family. This was before he became famous for things like The Terminator and Aliens. Legendary Sultan of Sequins Bob Mackie was brought in to develop a costumed look that was both reminiscent of the original film while also playing to the visually stimulating showmanship of these kinds of specials. And there was even a colleague of Lucas's from USC brought in to direct, David Akamba. After only a few days on set, Akamba left the production, citing creative differences. Though it was more likely due to spending a good chunk of the budget in the first 3 days just on union fees for working the crew overtime. Noted TV director Steve Binder was brought in to finish filming. Yet even he couldn't stay long due to other commitments, so post-production was handled by others. The holiday special aired only once on November 17th in the US, and once in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. It sounds like we have Lucas to thank for the limited airings, as there are reports that he was the one who prevented the show from being more widely broadcast overseas. Except, you should never underestimate the fanaticism of us Star Wars fans. Some people did take to recording the special, and the show's memory was kept alive in the fandom thanks to these legendary bootleg versions. Fast forward to the advent of sites like YouTube and Vimeo, and the entire show can be viewed with relative ease, probably to the chagrin of Lucas. Han Solo and Chewbacca are ambushed by Imperial patrols on their way to the Wookiee homeworld. They are returning to celebrate Life Day, a holiday important to Chewie's family. Meanwhile, Chewie's wife, son, and father are concerned with the delay, since Chewie's never missed a Life Day before. They reach out to various friends such as Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa, who reassure them that Han and Chewie are fine and will be there. To pass the time, the family views various musical sketches and comedic videos. However, an Imperial patrol suddenly shows up. The Empire, under orders from Darth Vader, are cracking down on security due to increased rebel activity, and this patrol is specifically looking for any sympathizers or known rebel collaborators. Han and Chewie are now unknowingly headed into a trap, with the Empire laying in wait. I'm going to try to be fair about this. Reviewing this special in the manner as I review the rest of the series is next to impossible and maybe even a bit stupid. This is a variety show, with a light narrative to bring in the Star Wars angle. There's no real in-depth characterization, thematic ideas, or substance worth discussing. It's like trying to review a talent show. It's either entertaining or it isn't. And boy, this isn't entertaining or worthwhile. No, it's not the worst variety show to have ever been done, but it's a pure crystallization of the reasons why this format died out. It was meant to pleasantly take up your free time for an evening and then be forgotten. It's the 70s equivalent of doom scrolling through TikTok and Instagram. I'm not going to go so far as to say the whole thing is, if you'll pardon the vernacular, brain rot, though a lot of it is. I do think there are a few laughs to be had out of this, though those might be unintentional. And everyone's quick to point out the cartoon short by Nelvana is the high point, which it is. But despite these few noteworthy qualities, the holiday special is one of the longest 100-minute shows I've ever had the displeasure of sitting through more than once. It's extremely dull, perplexing, and so lackadaisy in using its talent that it would have been better to have just done a clip show of the original movie for the entire runtime. And believe me, I'm no fan of clip shows. I think the big mistakes can be summed up as thus. 1. Doing a narrative within the Star Wars universe. To those unfamiliar with variety shows, this tricks us into thinking we're going to see something with actions and consequences. It's a look into the Star Wars universe through something rather lighthearted, that we're actually going to see most of the main cast throughout. Except it's not any of these things. The Star Wars trappings are a window dressing to sell this show, and the focus was taken from the variety acts and placed on that property. I'm not sure why this team didn't just do a disconnected format, using the Star Wars elements to dress up the acts rather than tie them into something that has a beginning, middle, and end. I think it would have done better, even if you did nothing to spice up the acts. Speaking of which, that's problem number 2 and the main thing that kills variety shows. The individual skits and acts aren't impressive. I'm not saying some people didn't put some effort into this, but none of this makes any sense together, and each bit is relying on the strength of their performers. It's as if someone came up with a mildly amusing idea for a skit, and then passed the burden of making that idea hilarious over to someone else, who then passed it over to someone else, and thus started a chain of irresponsibility that placed all the responsibility on the actors, and as you know, actors can only do so much with no direction. The singing is, dare I say, passable, though no one's likely to remember the songs that aren't based off of John Williams' tunes. The dancing is unremarkable, and the comedic acts range from the bizarrely funny, to the dull, to the stupid. Unless you're watching this with some friends and some substance to enhance your gathering, this is a slog. I feel like the only way to properly review this is to go through act by act. There's really no point in talking about the first 10 minutes of the special with Chewie's family. I guess I'm impressed that I know more or less what the gist is of every family member's conversation, except listening to just Shiruk with no human interaction in between is pretty painful. The circus act is the first one up, and it's a very stripped down version of Cirque du Soleil without any true spectacle. I've seen children's Sunday programs that are more interesting than this. Next is the Harvey Korman Julia Child impression, which I will admit I get some laughs from. How do you not laugh at a four-armed cook going whip, whip, wah? The virtual reality song with Diane Carroll is about as uncomfortable to watch as seeing Howard the Duck flirt with Beverly in the 1986 film. It's so reminiscent of something I can't show on YouTube that I just cringe. How was this bit approved by the censors? Sure, there's nothing explicitly sexual being shown or done, but I feel dirty after just watching a clip of it. And I can't imagine some kids didn't have an eyebrow raised in confusion. The Jefferson Starship performance is fine, but unremarkable and dated. I can only imagine they got picked because of their previous song Hyperdrive and their band name. The song, by the way, Light the Sky on Fire, actually made it onto the US billboards, coming in at 66. And now we come to the show's highlight, the first official animated Star Wars story. Star Wars would have a spotty track record with animation until the mid-2000s, but this actually feels like what a lot of us would have rather seen from this whole special than the variety acts. Sure, the animation is incredibly dated with some bizarre character designs, but there's a lot notable here. It was written primarily by Lucas himself. It's one of the few times animated TV versions of these original trilogy characters would be voiced by their live-action counterparts. It's the introduction of Boba Fett. His shock weapon would be brought back for The Mandalorian, as Jon Favreau is a self-admitted fan of the holiday special. And Nelvana would continue to have an association with Star Wars. It would later produce the Droids and Ewoks cartoons in the mid-80s, and the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars micro-series would later call a pivotal planet in their second season Nelvan. It's not a great short. It was clearly meant to entertain the children in the audience, with a minor theme about how you should treat those around you and the consequences that brings. But how sad is it when the 10-minute children's portion of the show is arguably the highest quality point in an hour-and-a-half special? In truth, this strikes me as being on the same quality level as one of the lesser episodes of something like The Clone Wars or Rebels. But when paired with the rest of the holiday special, it feels like an inspired breath of fresh air. Harvey Korman returns to do an instructional video playing a malfunctioning android, which I might have enjoyed if I was 5. After the animated segment and the Korman cooking section, I would say the B. Arthur Cantina bit is my favorite part of the special, though it tries my patience with a stupid Korman character desperately trying to get Arthur's attention. I kind of like the song, and Arthur thankfully isn't trying to play something out of character for a world-weary bartender outside of the song, which isn't as bad as some of the others have been. I did laugh out loud when the segment was framed as a required Imperial video broadcast throughout the galaxy showing us life on Tatooine, quote, in the hope that our own lives may be uplifted by the comparison and enriched with the gratitude of relief. Okay, am I misunderstanding the announcer? Did she in essence say, take a look at this wretched hive and be grateful your own lives don't suck as much as this? Really? That's a Mustafarian burn if I've ever heard one. We end on Carrie Fisher singing a final song set partially to the main Star Wars theme, hoping we can join in on the joy of celebrating Life Day. If you needed visual proof that no one in the main cast cared to be here, check out the inserts of Harrison Ford. He's miserable. That's partly why I skipped over most of the filler sections in between the acts. We occasionally get a quick cutaway with one of the main cast, or we focus on the subplot with Art Carney. Carney is a talented actor and is the only one apart from Arthur and Korman that's adding some life to the show. I can't criticize him too much. He can naturally be charming, and some of that splashes onto Son Dan, a light-hearted undercover rebel agent. But I just don't care because it's clear that the in-between footage is killing time to pad out the show. Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill act like this is a school play for their bits. By the way, the reason Mark looks as weird as he does is due to the makeup being done by live theater people. If you've ever done live theater, you know a lot of foundation and contour lines are the norm. You have so much cake on your face, you start to resemble a mannequin. Sure, Mark had had his car accident by this time, but this makeup was not done primarily to cover those scars. I guess the nice thing about using clips here is that it reminds us there was a fantastic movie before this special. For eagle-eyed Star Wars fans, you'll notice a fair bit of deleted footage here from the original film. Plus, this was the first time James Earl Jones was credited for voicing Darth Vader. He originally went uncredited for the first film, and I believe he was still uncredited for the original version of Empire. It wasn't until Jedi that he finally got his name posted on screen. The other production elements were obviously done on the cheap. This production had a $1 million budget and was given a full month to shoot, both of which were unusual for these kinds of shows, but you can tell where the corner cutting went. The Falcon interior only looks slightly better than I could have managed coming out of high school if I did it myself. The Ralph McQuarrie artwork is nice, but imposing Lumpy on it really makes it stand out in a bad way. I'll also say the animation style resembling Mobius is interesting, but I guess I'm too used to the Filoni style now to fully appreciate it. I will give a final recommendation, not to the special, but to A Disturbance in the Force. This was a documentary done about the holiday special with a tie-in book that goes into the production history of the show and its legacy. These were the primary sources I used for some of the history and behind-the-scenes clips for this review, and both are quite fascinating. The Star Wars Holiday Special is what it is, a promotional tie-in to keep the franchise alive. I guess the old adage of there's no such thing as bad publicity is true here. It's another unforgettable part of the Star Wars franchise and has, in its own way, contributed to the legacy of that original film. Unlike most of the sequels, however, this has been universally derided almost from the get-go, and has never received the critical reevaluation that some of them have had. I'd like to say some of the hate is overblown. Let's be honest, a lot of Star Wars hate has been over the years, as there are flashes of fun to be had here. But a lot of that fun is disconnected and perhaps unintentional. And even when you lower your bar of standards into remembering to judge this as a variety show, it fails to meet even that. I have always said there are only a few things with the Star Wars name that I actively dislike or downright hate. Believe it or not, this is the only live-action piece I've seen so far to have that distinction. And whenever I see the online vitriol surrounding certain Star Wars projects, I remind myself, it could be worse.